I have crossed over and become a lady in Prince Victor's estate. What kind of dump is this? A woman wearing coarse, spun clothes entered carrying a water basin. She rushed over abruptly. The mountain meets the sky. I instinctively responded. The river silences the beast. She grabbed my shoulders and firmly covered my mouth. Forget it. Forget all those messy thoughts of yours. Just behave properly as the ninth lady. Otherwise, in this estate, world, crossers die horribly. Die horribly. The person who entered claimed to be my concubine aunt, Madame Jo. She turned back, lowered her voice, each word seeming squeezed through clenched teeth. Listen, in this estate, those who talk nonsense have all died, especially those who talk nonsense like you just did. They die the fastest, the most miserably. Looking at the fear in her eyes, an absurd thought emerged. Tentatively, in an extremely low voice, I spoke a sentence in English. What happened? Madame Jo's body stiffened abruptly, her face instantly turning deathly pale. You're also, I nodded, my heart racing wildly. I had found my kindred spirit in this strange world. Yet Madame Jo showed no trace of joy. The prince's estate is an eerie place, always producing people like us. We die quickly, and our deaths go unnoticed. The year before last, a manservant went around preaching all are equal. The next day, he was found drowned in the lily pond. They called it an accident. Last year, a new concubine started experimenting with perfume and soap. Before she could succeed, she was beaten to death for offending the princess. Madame Jo's voice dropped lower, chillingly cold. Half a year ago, the seventh lady, also a concubine's daughter, suddenly, she started shouting in the garden, I want freedom, against the old ways, and even tried to grab Prince Victor's hand, saying she wanted to show him her world. The prince said nothing at the time. That night, he went to her courtyard himself and personally ordered her beaten to death. He said, Madame Jo imitated a voice of icy cruelty, an evil spirit's charm, to break the sacred order. She deserved death. A chill ran through me as I timidly spoke. The prince, Madame Jo gave a bitter smile. What the prince despises most are people like us. I heard, the former princess. She won all of his love, but vanished completely at the height of his devotion. The prince searched for her like a madman for 3 years. Later, somehow he learned the term world, crosser. Realizing he'd been deceived, his emotions played by a wandering soul from another world. From then on, the prince became the nightmare of all otherworldly souls. This estate is like a sieve. Wandering spirits constantly cross over, only to be purged again and again. Arya, concubine, looked at me with despair in her eyes. Tell me, aren't they afraid of death? Why must they reveal themselves? Wouldn't it be better to live quietly and obediently? I had no answer. The transmigration protagonist script I imagined was actually a goddamn death countdown. I must survive, live by this world's rules. The time for morning greetings was approaching, and Madame Jo helped me with my toilette. Her skillful hands concealed all my irregularities. She quickly whispered the rules of the prince's estate to me. Prince Victor, the princess, various consorts, favored concubines, young lords and ladies. I had to memorize these intricate relationships. Along the way, I kept my head down, following behind Madame Jo. Patrolling guards cast sharp glances, while passing maids and manservants hurried by without daring to speak. The greeting hall was already filled with many people. The princess sat at the head, dignified and elegant yet expressionless. We stood like background scenery, listening to the princess and several favored women making small talk. Domestic trifles, clothing, and jewelry. I carefully controlled my gaze, not letting it reveal any curiosity or judgment unbefitting this era. A brightly dressed concubine smiled and said to the princess, Your Highness, this coral of yours is truly a rarity, surely worth a fortune. The princess smiled faintly and replied casually, They're merely displayed for decoration. But then, the concubine abruptly shifted the subject. If we're speaking of rarities, this humble one recently obtained an even more extraordinary recipe called cake. Sweet, fragrant, and fluffy. Shall I prepare some for your highness another day? My heart skipped a beat. Madame Zhou gently pinched my back, signaling me to stay still. The princess's smile faded slightly. Oh, what peculiar recipe. I've never heard of it. The prince's estate has fixed provisions. Don't cause unnecessary trouble. The concubine seemed not to notice, still excitedly insisting. It's different, Your Highness. I guarantee you've never tasted. Enough. The princess interrupted her, her tone turning cold. Focus your efforts on serving Prince Victor properly, instead of dabbling in these dubious novelties. The concubine paled, falling silent with an awkward expression. After the morning greetings concluded, everyone gradually withdrew. I kept my head down, following Madame Zhou. While passing through the corridor, I overheard two maids whispering. Have you heard? The one in the west courtyard. Shh, keep your voice down. They say she passed last night. What happened? No one knows. She suddenly developed a high fever, started rambling, something about mobile phones, computers, and then, goodness, stopped talking. It's terrifying. My hands and feet turned icy cold. Madame Zhou's face remained expressionless, but she quickened her pace. We returned to that secluded courtyard. Only after closing the door did Madame Zhou let out a long sigh. Did you see? That's what happens to those who won't stay in their place. The one who wanted to make cakes won't last long, and the one from the west courtyard is already gone. I sat on the cold stool without saying a word. The pressure to survive had never felt so concrete and terrifying. A few days later, rumors began to circulate. The concubine who wanted to make cakes was dragged to the woodshed and beaten to death, accused of using unclean food in an attempt to harm Prince Victor. When the news arrived, Madame Zhou was embroidering. The needle pricked her finger, and she silently sucked away the bead of blood. Life in the prince's estate was monotonous and drawn out. I carefully played my role as the ninth lady, silent, timid, invisible. I learned every rule of this era, needlework, etiquette, and even secretly learning the characters of this time. Reading traditional Chinese characters was difficult for me, but I forced myself to learn. Madame Zhou occasionally helped me. We had an unspoken understanding, never mentioning that secret again. Only occasionally, in moments of extreme fear, would she look at me and murmur to herself, "Arya, we must survive." I nodded. We must survive. Strange occurrences still happened from time to time in the prince's estate. A maid suddenly cut her hair short, declaring she wanted to be a modern woman, then vanished. An accountant created a set of strange bookkeeping symbols, claiming they were more efficient, then vanished. Prince Victor was like a precise elimination program, coldly erasing anything abnormal. I tried my best to avoid attracting attention, but trouble still found me. One day, the princess summoned all the ladies. She said it was to examine our studies, needlework and poetry. My needlework was average, and my poetry was even worse. Yu Shuya had never been valued much, so she never studied properly. I could only barely recite a few beginner poems from this era. When it was my turn, I lowered my head and recited the simplest one. The princess frowned. That's it, truly. You can't carve rotten wood. Several favored elder sisters cover their mouths with light laughs. Ninth sister's mind is clearly elsewhere, probably thinking of other things. I kept my head down, not daring to argue. Your daughter is dull-witted. I beg mother's forgiveness. The princess waved her hand impatiently. Dismissed. You're an eyesore. I retreated to the side, my palms drenched in cold sweat. The assessment continued. It was the third lady, Yu Shuyao's turn. Born of a consort, her status was far above mine. She presented her embroidery, which was exquisite. The princess nodded slightly without further comment. Then she was asked to recite poetry. Yu Shuyao paused briefly before beginning. If life were always like the start, why would the autumn wind grieve the painted fan? I jolted my head up. Nayland Xingda's poetry. The princess's brows instantly furrowed tightly. The hall fell silent. Everyone sensed the shift in atmosphere. Yara, you seemed unaware of the issue and continued reciting. Casually changed is an old friend's heart. Yet they say an old friend's heart is fickle. How unlike that fickle nobleman who vowed to stay together like paired wings and branches. She finished reciting. her face even carrying a faint trace of melancholy. Smack! The princess slammed the table abruptly, her face livid. What fine lines. If life were always like the start. What fine vows. To stay together like paired wings and branches. Yara, where did you learn this licentious, vulgar song? Speak. Yara, was startled, her face turning pale. Mother, I came across it by chance in an unofficial book. I thought the imagery was beautiful. Unofficial book? What unofficial book? The princess pressed sharply. How could such shameless books exist in the prince's estate? I see your mind has been corrupted. Guards, take the third lady away. Confine her to the ancestral hall for reflection. She's not to leave without my orders. Search. Comb through every book in her chamber. Two matrons stepped forward and seized Yara by the arms. Yara panicked, still trying to defend herself. Mother, I merely thought the poetry was well written. I didn't. The princess wouldn't listen, and Yara was dragged away. I stood frozen in place, my entire body turning cold. I knew she was finished, marked by the princess herself, and branded with a corrupted mind. Moreover, she had committed the gravest taboo, possessing poetry from another world. Prince Victor would learn of this soon. What awaited her would be far worse than mere confinement in the ancestral hall. I glanced around. Some sisters gloated with schadenfreude. Some wore fearful expressions, while others remained detached. Madame Zhou stood in a corner, head bowed, her body trembling almost imperceptibly. I clenched my fists, my nails digging deep into my palms. A chilling fear, like mourning a hare's death while a fox grieves, seized me. That evening, Madame Zhou quietly entered my room. Her face looked unusually pale in the candlelight. Have you heard about the third lady? I nodded. Madame Zhou shook her head. The odds are against her. The prince despises such matters most, and the princess won't let her off. There's nothing we can do. She looked at me, her eyes filled with profound helplessness. Don't cause trouble. Don't be curious. Forget that poem you heard. I remained silent, my heart heavy with distress. That Magnolia tune was such a beautiful poem in my original world. Yet here, it has become a death warrant. The next day, news arrived. The third lady, Yara, had suddenly fallen gravely ill in the ancestral hall and passed away. That was the official statement from the prince's estate. But privately, rumors spread that the prince had visited the ancestral hall, and afterward, she was gone. How it happened, no one dared to ask. No one dared to speak of it. Another world, crosser vanished, swallowed silently by this devouring world. I felt ill, feverish, haunted by nightmares. My dreams were filled with Naylan Rongrua's poetry and Yara's terrified face. Madame Zhou tended to me, secretly brewing medicine without alerting anyone. We couldn't afford this state physician, nor did we have the status to summon one. She sat by my bedside, her eyes hollow. Another one gone. When will it be our turn? I grasped her hand. It was ice, cold. It won't happen. Concubine, we will survive. After recovering, I grew more silent and more vigilant. I rarely left our small courtyard, striving to minimize my presence. But I realized it wasn't enough. The prince's estate was an abyss where trouble finds you even if you avoid it. As year-end approached, the estate grew busier. The princess decreed that all ladies must assist in auditing accounts and learn household management. Dubbed as training, it was merely a search for unpaid labor. I was assigned the most complex and tedious portion, the inventory records of old items in the storeroom. The handwriting was scribbled, the entries chaotic. I buried myself in the ledger, checking item by item. Then, I discovered an issue. The records for several batches of silk fabrics received last year are unclear. The outbound records didn't match the inventory. The discrepancy was small, but it existed. I thought I might have misread or miscalculated, so I carefully verified 3 more times. There was indeed a problem, not a simple bookkeeping error, but traces of intentional cover-up. It involved a stewardess from the princess's courtyard. My heart sank. Trouble. If I reported it, I'd offend someone from the princess's quarters. If I didn't, I'd be the scapegoat if things went wrong later. Pretend I saw nothing? The risk was too great. Madame Zhou noticed me frowning over the ledger and asked. I whispered the situation, and Madame Zhou's face turned pale. Foolish. How could you uncover it? You should have made it match. Even if it didn't match, you should have made it match. You're too serious. But, no buts. Madame Zhou stamped her foot in anxiety. Now that, you're inviting trouble. Those shrewd stewards. How could they leave obvious evidence? This might very well be a trap, designed specifically to ensnare someone inexperienced like you. Go quickly. Alter the account books. Pretend you discovered nothing. I looked at the account books, then at the panicked concubine. A stubborn resolve suddenly welled up in my heart. After hiding for so long, enduring for so long, is there still no escape? Must I either join their corruption or allow myself to be slaughtered? No, I cannot alter them. If I do, I will truly be finished. I closed the account book. Concubine, don't be afraid. I have a plan. The next day, the time came to return the account books. All the sisters submitted their verified sections. When it was my turn, I stepped forward and handed over the account book. The princess flipped through it casually, paying little attention, and asked offhandedly, "Ninth girl, is there any issue with the section you reviewed?" My voice trembled timidly, filled with hesitation. Replying to mother, "This daughter is foolish. Some parts are hard to understand. It seems there are no issues." The princess glanced at me, seemingly finding my appearance displeasing. "If you don't understand, then study more." What kind of appearance is this cowering? Dismissed, as if granted amnesty. I quickly withdrew, my palms drenched in sweat. I intentionally acted foolish and timid, making the princess believe it was incompetent, so she wouldn't bother questioning me in detail. I gambled that she wouldn't carefully examine those trivial warehouse accounts. I gambled that the stewardess who tampered with them had a guilty conscience and wouldn't dare speak up. The account books were submitted, and there was no further follow-up. A few days later, I heard that the stewardess in the princess's courtyard was granted permission to leave the mansion for retirement due to old age and frailty. I knew I had won my gamble. The princess had dealt with her to maintain her own dignity, and I was safe. Madame Zhou remained fearful for a long time afterward, but for the first time, she looked at me with a complex expression. "Arya, you." I shook my head. "Concubine, hiding alone is useless. This prince's estate will not show us mercy just because we hide. We must find a way to survive, to live better." After the ledger incident, I realized that cowardice and concealment alone could not guarantee absolute safety. I needed to demonstrate some value. I began to study even harder, learning etiquette, mastering needlework, and even secretly reading books permitted in the estate. I remained quiet as ever, but on necessary occasions, I made sure to appear sensible, well-mannered, and occasionally useful, yet never conspicuous. I carefully maintained this balance, making myself like a drop of water, blending into the ocean of the prince's estate, inconspicuous, yet undeniably present. Time passed slowly. Strange occurrences still happened occasionally within the estate. A maid was discovered trying to communicate with others using strange symbols. She vanished afterward. A young lord suddenly developed an interest in alchemy, nearly burned down the study, and was severely punished by Prince Victor before being confined. The prince's purges never ceased. Madame Zhou and I lived with increasing caution. Gradually, we heard more fragmented information about the former princess, how deeply favored she had been, and how many novel things she brought with her, how mad with grief the prince became after her disappearance, and ultimately, how cold he turned. One autumn day, guests arrived at the prince's estate. It was the prince's close friend, a border garrison general visiting with his family. The estate hosted a grand banquet, requiring all ladies to attend. On such occasions, I was typically the most invisible presence. Seated at the farthest table, I kept my head down while eating to minimize my presence. Midway through the feast, the atmosphere grew lively. The general's wife said to the princess, with a smile, "Long have I heard of the exceptional talent and beauty of the ladies in this estate. Seeing them today confirms their reputation. Might they favor us with artistic demonstrations to broaden our horizons?" The princess naturally agreed with a smile. Several favored sisters stepped forward in turn, playing the zither, dancing, and composing poetry, earning widespread praise. When it was my turn, I stepped up and performed a proper curtsy. I am dull-witted and only know some simple needlework. I dare not offend the distinguished guest's eyes. The princess waved her hand, about to dismiss me, but the general, seemingly having drunk too much, spoke up with a laugh. Needlework is fine too. A woman's proper duty. Don't you agree, Prince? Prince Victor sat at the head seat, his expression stern. Hearing this, he cast a cold, indifferent glance my way. He gave a slight nod. Since the general is interested, embroider something simple for us to see. My heart tightened abruptly, the pressure mounting instantly. Countless eyes fell upon me, some curious, some scrutinizing, some disdainful. I knew I could not refuse, could not perform too well and arouse suspicion, nor could I perform too poorly and disgrace the prince's estate, for the consequences would be even worse. The maid quickly brought needlework and a simple embroidery hoop. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. I thought of the chrysanthemums in the courtyard that were about to wither. It was the most common subject of this era, and the least likely to cause mistakes. I sat down, picked up the needle and thread, my fingers trembling slightly, but I tried my best to control them. I embroidered quickly, aiming only for resemblance rather than capturing the essence, using the most ordinary and basic stitches with conventional color matching. There were faint murmurs around me. The princess's expression was rather displeased. The general's wife watched, maintaining a polite smile on her face. Finally, I finished. A simple, even somewhat stiff chrysanthemum. I presented it. Your daughter's hands are clumsy. I beg father, mother, general, and madam for forgiveness. The princess glanced at it, clearly dissatisfied, but due to the occasion, she said nothing. The general's wife smoothed things over, saying, the ninth lady is still young. It's quite good that she can embroider like this. Prince Victor showed no expression, waving his hand to dismiss me. I retreated to my seat, my back drenched in a cold sweat from fright. However, the general's only son, a youth who appeared around my age, suddenly spoke up. Huh? Why are the chrysanthemum's leaves and stems this color? Something seems off, doesn't it? All eyes focused on me once again. My heart sank. For the sake of speed and simplicity, I had used more common green thread, without deliberately matching the autumnal hues that chrysanthemum foliage should have. A tiny detail, almost unnoticeable, had been pointed out by this young man. The princess's face instantly darkened. The general shot a glare at his son. What does a child like you know? Stop talking nonsense. The youth seemed somewhat defiant, but dared not say more. Prince Victor's gaze fell upon me again. The hall fell silent. I lowered my head, my voice trembling with fear and timidity. Father, your daughter is foolish. I was only focused on embroidering quickly, and failed to observe carefully. Please forgive me. I crafted myself into the image of someone eager to complete tasks, yet inherently mediocre. Prince Victor stared at me for a few seconds before shifting his gaze away, his voice cold. Apply more diligence in the future. You may go. Yes. I nearly stumbled back to my seat. I have no recollection of how the banquet proceeded afterward. My mind was occupied solely by Prince Victor's icy eyes. Did he grow suspicious? Even just a little. When the banquet finally concluded, I returned to my courtyard utterly drained. Madame Jo followed me inside, closed the door, and spoke with a trembling voice. You scared me to death. Could you plead illness for such occasions in the future? I shook my head. We cannot avoid them. It would only raise more suspicion. We must be even more cautious. After the banquet incident, I tread even more carefully, as if on thin ice. I began deliberately imitating the minor flaws Yushuya might originally have had, such as occasionally tipping over teacup by accident, or intentionally misremember one or two inconsequential rules, to make myself appear more normal, more fitting for the image of an unfavored, mediocrely talented illegitimate daughter. Days passed in constant apprehension. Winter arrived, and a major incident occurred within the prince's estate. The princess fell gravely ill, confined to her bed. Multiple imperial physicians were summoned, and countless doses of medicine were administered. Yet her condition worsened instead of improving. The atmosphere in the estate grew even more oppressive. Some whispered the princess was cursed. Others suspected foul play from the inner courtyards. Prince Victor's temper flared. He punished several gossiping servants, but the princess's health showed no sign of recovery. One night, Madame Zhou secretly visited my chamber. "Arya, trouble is brewing. The prince has ordered a full investigation into the princess's illness. A Taoist master from Dragon, Tiger Mountain will arrive tomorrow. I've heard. The prince suspects. It's those things again." My heart clenched violently. Those things? World crossers? Does Prince Victor suspect a world crosser harmed the princess using methods beyond modern medicine? Or is he simply using this opportunity to purge those he suspects once again? What should we do? Concubine? Madame Zhou grasped my hand. "Tomorrow, no matter what happens, we must hide and absolutely avoid drawing any attention. When the Taoist master performs the ritual, we'll stay inside our room and must not go out." The next day, the prince's estate was placed under strict lockdown. The Taoist master from Dragon, Tiger Mountain arrived and set up an altar to perform the ritual. Incense smoke curled upward as bells and chimes resonated together. All the women in the household were ordered to remain in their own courtyards and forbidden from moving about freely. Madame Zhou and I bolted the door and hid inside the room. We could faintly hear the chanting and the sound of bells from outside. The ritual lasted for most of the day. In the afternoon, news arrived. The Taoist master had found a cloth doll inscribed with the princess's birth details in a remote corner of the estate's backyard, pierced all over with needles. The prince's estate instantly erupted in chaos. Prince Victor was furious and ordered a strict investigation. The entire prince's estate was turned upside down. The searchers eventually reached our small courtyard. Madame Zhou and I knelt on the ground, watching them roughly rummage through our already meager belongings. My heart raced as I prayed there would be nothing that shouldn't be there. Fortunately, there wasn't. Our place was too impoverished, too insignificant to notice. The searchers soon left. We collapsed onto the floor, drenched in cold sweat. The blood magic incident continued to escalate. People were constantly taken away for interrogation, and screams occasionally echoed from afar. A few days later, a low-ranking maid responsible for cleaning the backyard was framed as the culprit. It was said she held a grudge for being punished by the princess and thus practiced blood magic. She was publicly beaten to death. A horrific end. Yet the princess's illness showed no sign of improvement. One day, a favored consort advised Prince Victor, "Your Highness, I have heard that some extremely vicious curses require the blood of close relatives to break. Perhaps the filial devotion of the young ladies in the estate." She did not say it explicitly, but her meaning was clear. She suspected the young ladies. Prince Victor's gloomy gaze swept over all of us. "In that case, each of you sisters shall contribute a bowl of blood for the princess's medicinal prayers. All young ladies, whether legitimate or illegitimate, must give blood." The bloodletting ceremony was held outside the princess's courtyard, supervised personally by Prince Victor. Bowls of bright red blood were drawn from the sisters' wrists. Some wept, some fainted. Prince Victor watched expressionlessly. When it was my turn, the cold blade sliced across my wrist, bringing sharp pain as blood flowed into the bowl. I stared at the vivid red color and felt a wave of dizziness. This cruel, superstitious act devoid of any scientific basis. What it truly represented was the heartlessness of this era and Prince Victor's paranoid principle of rather kill the innocent than spare the guilty. After the blood was taken, the princess drank the medicine mixed with blood, but her condition remained unchanged. Prince Victor's expression grew even more grim. The consort's slander had failed, but she seemed unwilling to give up. A few days later, she proposed a new suggestion. "Your Highness, I've heard that ancient methods say emotional illnesses require emotional cures. Her Highness's illness is peculiar. Perhaps she has offended some spirit or carries inner turmoil. Why not have the ladies personally copy Buddhist scriptures to place under Her Highness's pillow? This may ward off evil spirits and calm the mind. Copying scriptures requires sincere devotion, neat handwriting, and a focused heart free of distractions. Prince Victor glanced at her and nodded, approved. Thus, each of us was assigned the task of copying scriptures. We were given 3 days to complete it, with strict requirements for neat handwriting and not a single error or omission. This was yet another arduous and demanding task. I was assigned the Diamond Sutra, which was particularly lengthy. I had to work day and night, using my most meticulous handwriting. I dare not let my focus waver, fearing that a single mistake would brand me as insincere. Madame Zhou helped me grind the ink, her eyes filled with worry. They're just finding ways to torment people. Be careful. Don't make any mistakes in your writing. I wrote very slowly and carefully, not daring to stop even when my wrist ached. On the evening of the 3rd day, I finally finished copying. I checked it carefully 3 times, confirming there were no errors. I breathed a sigh of relief, planning to submit it first thing the next morning. However, the next morning, when I prepared to take the sutras to submit them, I discovered that the last few pages of the sutra had been violently crossed out with thick black ink strokes. My mind went blank with a buzzing sound. Who did this? When did this happen? Madame Zhou rushed over, her face instantly turning pale when she saw the ruined sutras. It's over. This is disrespect to Buddha, a grave offense. Prince Victor will never forgive you. Was it that consort, or someone else who can't stand me? They dare not use blood magic against me, so they resort to this method to eliminate me. Rewriting it is impossible now. Submitting the destroyed sutra means certain death, and claiming illness to avoid submission also leads to death. Madame Zhou was so anxious she began to cry. What should we do? Arya, this time, there's no escaping it. I stared at the ruined scripture, at the vicious ink stains. An overwhelming fury and will to survive surged through me. I cannot die. I absolutely cannot die here for no reason. I grabbed Madame Zhou's hand abruptly. Concubine, help me. What? Help me find a new set of brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Quickly. Are you going to rewrite it? There's no time. No, not rewriting. I stared wildly at the destroyed final pages. I'll take the gamble. Though she didn't understand, Madame Zhou secretly fetched a new set of stationery as fast as she could. I spread out the paper, picked up the brush, and took a deep breath. I began recopying the destroyed portion of the text. I wasn't aiming for a perfect replica. I intended to mimic the worst handwriting Yushiya might produce. I even deliberately misspelled a few insignificant characters, then carefully blotted them out with ink drops, making it appear clumsy, flustered, yet done with utmost effort. Madame Zhou watched from the side. Stunned, I wrote quickly, my wrist aching from tension and exertion, my forehead drenched in cold sweat. Finally, I finished the last few pages. Then, I took the newly written sheets and held them cautiously over the candle flame to warm them, making the ink seem dried hastily, yet leaving the paper slightly yellowed, distinct from the older pages. After completing this, I swiftly replaced the destroyed old pages with the newly written ones. At a glance, the entire sutra appeared complete. However, the handwriting on the last few pages was noticeably uglier and more frantic, with signs of corrections, and the paper was slightly newer and rougher. Will this work? Madame Zhou's voice trembled. I don't know. I stared at this pieced together scripture, my heart pounding wildly. I could only gamble, but that the prince and princess wouldn't carefully examine the entire text, but that they would believe more in a concubine, born daughter's foolishness and panic than in her audacious deception, but that they would think no one would dare tamper with such a matter. The time came to submit the scriptures. The sisters stepped forward one by one, presenting their neatly copied scriptures. Holding that scripture, I walked forward. My steps were unsteady, my face pale, my eyes evasive, my entire body trembling slightly, the very picture of a guilty conscience and extreme fear. The princess was ill, so Prince Victor received it personally. His icy gaze fell upon me, and upon the scripture in my hands. He did not take it, merely signaling to the matron beside him. The matron took the sutra and checked if all the pages were intact. She skimmed through it roughly, noticing the ugly handwriting and corrections on the last few pages. She frowned and glanced at me. I promptly dropped to my knees with a thud, my voice trembling and stammering tearfully. "Father, forgive me. Your daughter is foolish." In the final days, working day and night, my mind was addled. I made many mistakes in writing. Your daughter didn't mean to. Your daughter tried her best to correct them. Please, Father, in light of your daughter's filial devotion, forgive me. I kowtowed, my body shaking like a leaf in the autumn wind. Prince Victor looked at me coldly, then glanced at the matron. The matron reported in a low voice, "Your Highness, the ninth lady's handwriting is indeed somewhat immature. The last few pages are particularly rushed, with signs of corrections, but the content is largely complete." Prince Victor's gaze lingered on me for a few more seconds. I was so terrified I nearly collapsed, my heart pounding as if it would leap out of my throat. Finally, he averted his gaze and waved his hand, his voice tinged with a barely perceptible annoyance. "Utterly foolish. Get out." "Yes, thank you, Father. Thank you, Father." As if granted a pardon, I scrambled away in a clumsy retreat. When I returned to Madame Zhou's side, I could barely stand, the back of my robe soaked through with cold sweat. The prince had bought my act of stupidity. He didn't believe a mere concubine's daughter would dare deceive him, nor could he conceive that someone so dim-witted would devise such a substitution scheme. In his eyes, I was merely an insignificant, even irritating waste, and waste was safe. After the scripture incident, the princess's illness unexpectedly began to gradually improve. Whether it was the court physician's medicine finally taking effect or some other reason remained unclear. The prince's estate slowly returned to its former routine, but this turmoil had sharpened my understanding of this world's cruelty and dangers. Madame Zhou, too, was frightened out of her wits and fell ill. As I cared for her, the thought in my mind grew increasingly clear. Hiding alone was not enough. We had to find a way to escape the center of this whirlpool. At the very least, we needed some ability to protect ourselves. I noticed the fifth lord of the prince's estate, an unfavored illegitimate son who enjoyed reading and had a relatively gentle disposition. I managed, through a maid, to send him several rare miscellaneous books I had secretly copied. He was surprised upon receiving them and later expressed his gratitude to me via the maid. Occasionally, when we met during morning greetings, he would give me a slight nod. This trivial kindness felt precious in the icy atmosphere of the prince's estate. In spring, news came from the palace that several eligible princes were to select consorts. The eligible young ladies of the prince's estate began to stir with ambition, including the sixth lady, Jasmine Yu, daughter of the consort who had previously slandered others. She became exceptionally active, striving to impress the prince and elders at every opportunity. The princess viewed this favorably, as having a consort from the estate would benefit everyone. Prince Victor's attitude was rather ambiguous, neither approving nor disapproving. One day, the princess summoned us to discuss the rules and precautions for the imperial selection. Jasmine, you listened with exceptional attentiveness, asking questions from time to time. The other sisters also had their own thoughts. I kept my head down, trying to minimize my presence. I had no interest whatsoever in the imperial family. It would only be another, larger cage, a more perilous abyss. However, things often take unexpected turns. The princess suddenly mentioned, "This selection, His Majesty intends to choose principal wives, consorts, and to enrich the rear palace for several princes simultaneously. All eligible young women from each family must be registered and reported. Shiyu, you've come of age, haven't you?" My heart sank abruptly. I lifted my head and met the princess's scrutinizing gaze. In reply to Mother, "Your daughter is still too young." "Not too young," the princess interrupted me coolly. "By the rules, you should be reported. As for whether you'll be chosen, that will depend on your fate." My heart turned half, cold with dread. Reporting my name meant the possibility of being chosen, but I had no reason to refuse. Yes, mother. I lower my head, nails digging deep into my palms. When Madame Zhou learned of this, she grew deeply worried. The imperial palace. That place devours people without spitting out bones. If you were selected, it won't happen. I calmed myself. The princess wouldn't give me any chance to overshadow her biological daughter or the young ladies from her faction. Reporting names was merely protocol. She'd surely eliminate me during the preliminary round. Perhaps my name wouldn't even be formally submitted. This wasn't what we needed to worry about. Indeed, in the following days, the princess focused entirely on Jasmine Yu and her legitimate daughter, the 8th Lady Jane Yu. She hired matrons from the palace to specially train them in etiquette, diverting all resources their way. As for me, it was merely a routine inquiry, with no further attention. I breathed a slight sigh of relief but remained cautious. The day of the selection drew nearer. The atmosphere in the prince's estate grew subtly tense, with undercurrents stirring among the young ladies. The 6th lady, Jasmine Yu, viewed all her marriageable sisters as potential rivals. One day, the princess bestowed upon the young ladies some newly arrived fabrics, instructing them to make new dresses in preparation for the selection. My share consisted of the most ordinary, even somewhat outdated material. When I went to collect the fabric, I happened to encounter Jasmine Yu there as well. She glanced at the material in my hands and let out a scornful laugh. This fabric suits you well, 9th sister. A sparrow can never become a phoenix. I lower my head, pretending to be timid. 6th sister speaks truly. She smiled triumphantly and left with her maid. The next day, however, trouble arose on Jasmine Yu's side. The most important dress she had prepared for the selection, made from an extremely precious piece of Suzhou embroidery, was discovered cut to shreds, completely ruined. Jasmine Yu flew into a rage, weeping and wailing uncontrollably. The princess was furious and ordered a strict investigation. All the servants who had come into contact with that fabric were arrested and interrogated. Eventually, a young maid responsible for guarding the storeroom, unable to endure the torture, confessed to having accidentally cut it. She was beaten to death. Though the matter seemed resolved, Jasmine Yu and the consort suspected that another lady had secretly orchestrated it. They regarded everyone with suspicion, especially the several illegitimate daughters. I, too, felt the weight of their doubtful gazes, though I had neither motive nor means to commit such an act. Such baseless suspicion was equally perilous. A few days later, something worse occurred. Jasmine Yu suddenly broke out in red rashes all over her face, itchy, painful, and utterly disfiguring. The imperial physician diagnosed it as contact with unclean substances, possibly an allergic reaction to pollen or the like. She was ordered to rest quietly, avoiding any exposure to wind in the short term, let alone participating in the selection. With the selection imminent, Jasmine Yu had lost her chance completely. In her room, she smashed everything breakable, weeping and cursing without end. The consort wept until she fainted before Prince Victor, whose face turned ashen as he ordered a thorough investigation. This time, it wasn't just the servants who were interrogated. All the ladies' courtyards were secretly searched. Once again, Madame Zhou and I were not spared in our small courtyard. This time, they searched more meticulously. They even lifted the bedding and inspected the depths of the wardrobe. My heart raced as I prayed no mishap would occur. Yet, the very thing I feared came to pass. An elderly matron pulled out a small, faintly fragrance-scented pouch from beneath my pillow. The pouch appeared ordinary, but it was clearly stuffed with dried flower petals, and no flowers could grow in my courtyard. "What is this?" the matron demanded sharply, presenting the pouch to the lead searcher. The head matron sniffed the pouch carefully, and her expression shifted. "These are dried osmanthus and jasmine blossoms, 9th lady. How do you explain this?" Madame Zhou was so terrified, she nearly fainted. Framed, a blatant frame, up. I was the target because I seemed to have the least backing, the easiest to manipulate, making me the perfect scapegoat. I don't know. This isn't mine." My voice trembled as I tried to defend myself. "It was found under your pillow. How dare you deny it?" The matron scolded sharply. "Take her away. Report to Prince Victor and the princess." 2 burly women stepped forward and seized me. "It wasn't me. Truly, it wasn't me," I struggled, crying out in despair. Madame Jo rushed forward. "Matron, please see reason. The 9th lady would never do such a thing. This must be a setup. Get away." The matron shoved Madame Jo aside. "Say whatever you have to say to Prince Victor and the princess." I was dragged out of the small courtyard, all the way toward the princess's main residence. Maids and manservants we encountered along the path scattered in fear. I knew it might truly be over this time. Caught red-handed, Prince Victor was in a towering rage. He would not listen to my explanations. He needed someone to appease the consort's anger and provide closure to this matter. And I was the perfect scapegoat, just like the maid who had been beaten to death before. I was dragged into the courtyard, where Prince Victor and the princess sat in the seats of honor. The consort stood to the side, her eyes red and swollen, glaring at me with a venomous gaze. "Jasmine, you had not come out," still weeping and making a scene in her room. "Your Highness, my lady, we found this under the 9th lady's pillow." The matron presented the scented pouch. Inside were dried flower powders of osmanthus and jasmine. The physician said these are exactly what the 6th lady must not touch. Prince Victor picked up the scented pouch, glanced at it, then shot me an icy, dagger-like glare. "Was it you?" I knelt on the ground, my body cold and trembling, my teeth chattering. "Father, please see clearly. Your daughter is wronged. I have never seen this scented pouch. It must be someone framing me." "Framed?" Consort shrieked. "Who would use such methods to frame an insignificant, illegitimate daughter like you? Clearly, you're jealous of Shu Jin. Your heart is full of malice. Prince Victor, you must seek justice for Jeaner." Prince Victor's expression grew even darker. "In this prince's estate, framing requires motive, and I appear to hold no value worth framing. The evidence is conclusive, yet you still dare to quibble." Prince Victor's voice carried killing intent. "It seems I have been too lenient with you all. Guards, father." I abruptly raised my head, shouting with all my strength, "Your daughter has something to say." Prince Victor frowned deeply, seemingly annoyed by my noise. "Speak." My mind raced. I had to gamble once more, betting on Prince Victor's sensitivity and hatred toward that thing. I took a deep breath, my voice trembling with fear but striving to remain clear. "Father, I may be foolish and timid, but precisely because of that, I know my place. I am well aware of my insignificance and would never dare commit such a treasonous act." This scented pouch appeared suspiciously. I suspect this is no ordinary harem intrigue." I lifted my head and mustered the courage to meet Prince Victor's icy gaze directly. "I have heard that some otherworldly spirits excel at using these bizarre methods to harm others and stir chaos. Their actions are often unpredictable and reckless. I beg you, Father, to investigate thoroughly the origin of this scented pouch, the source of this pollen. See if it connects to other strange occurrences in the manor recently. Perhaps the one who harmed 6 sisters shares the same roots as the one practicing blood magic and causing mother's grave illness." I threw caution to the wind, diverting the blame toward the world. Crossers, the very beings Prince Victor feared and despised most. Sure enough, upon hearing the phrases "otherworldly spirits," "bizarre methods," and "same roots," the prince's expression shifted abruptly. The killing intent around him intensified as he picked up the scented pouch once more. Examining it closely, the consort attempted to speak further. "My prince, do not listen to her nonsense." "Silence." Prince Victor snapped coldly. The consort immediately fell silent. Frightened, the prince stared at me, his gaze sharp as an eagle's. "Do you know that falsely accusing others increases your punishment?" I prostrated myself on the ground. "This daughter would not dare. I merely find this matter highly suspicious and unnatural. As someone insignificant, what benefit would I gain from harming 6 sister? It would only bring disaster upon myself. Even a fool understands the principle of avoiding calamity. Only those evil creatures who fear neither life nor death." and seek only to disrupt order, would commit such acts that harm others without benefiting themselves. My words struck directly upon the prince's most sensitive nerve. He remained silent for a moment. I could hear the frantic beating of my own heart. Finally, the prince spoke again. Matronly, your servant is here. Investigate this scented pouch thoroughly. Trace its fabric source, stitching techniques, pollen composition inside, all recent inventory records, and quarantine and interrogate every servant who has recently handled flowers, especially osmanthus and jasmine. Focus on whether any exhibited unusual behavior or speech. Understood. Matron Lee accepted the order and immediately withdrew. I breathed a slight sigh of relief. The prince's vigilance against world crossers indeed overrode everything else. He wouldn't kill me for now. I was taken away and locked in a remote woodshed within the prince's estate, with guards posted outside the door. I knew I wasn't completely out of danger yet. If nothing was uncovered, or if the consort applied more pressure, I might still become the scapegoat. The woodshed was cold and dark. Time passed slowly. In the dead of night, the woodshed door was pushed open quietly. A figure slipped inside. It was Madame Zhou. She secretly handed me a cold steam bun and a thick coat. Arya, how are you holding up? Her voice trembled with tears. I'm fine, concubine. What's happening outside? Prince Victor is furious. He's interrogated many people. Still no results. Consort has been weeping and making demands, insisting you be severely punished. The princess ordered you confined here for now. Madame Zhou grasped my hand. Arya, I'm scared. Don't be afraid, concubine. Instead, I grew calmer. As long as Prince Victor suspects this involves that matter, I still have a chance. But, no buts. I squeezed her hand tightly. We will survive this. The next afternoon, the woodshed door opened again. Matron Lee stood at the entrance, her expression stern. The ninth lady. Prince Victor wishes to see you. I followed Matron Lee to the study. Prince Victor sat alone behind his desk, his face so dark it seemed to drip with gloom. The study was thick with oppressive tension. I knelt on the floor. Father. Prince Victor didn't speak immediately, merely watching me with a cold, scrutinizing gaze. After a long silence, he finally spoke. The fabric of a scented pouch was distributed as a reward in this state a year ago, used by many servants. The stitching is crude and unidentifiable. The pollen is indeed osmanthus and jasmine, sourced from an old woman in charge of purchases for the small kitchen, who bought it privately. She claimed it was for brewing tea. After interrogating her all night, nothing suspicious was found. Many servants had contact with the flowers, and none have shown unusual behavior so far. My heart sank bit by bit. There's no evidence pointing to a world crosser's involvement. But Prince Victor shifted his tone. That woman confessed that a small packet of pollen went missing inexplicably a few days ago, which aligns with the timeline. She also recalled seeing a shadowy figure lurking near her residence recently, though she couldn't make out who it was. As for why the scented pouch was placed in your room, perhaps it truly is, as you said, they deemed you the easiest to manipulate. I held my breath, not daring to speak. Prince Victor tapped his fingers on the table. This matter will be set aside for now. Sixth daughter's incident was her own carelessness. She has no one else to blame. You may return. I could hardly believe my ears. Prince Victor had actually spared me. Did he believe my explanation? Or was he erring on the side of caution? Or perhaps he was simply weary of the harem conflicts. Regardless, I had survived. Thank you, Father Prince, for your discernment. I kowtowed heavily, my voice choked with emotion. Then I withdrew from the study. Stepping outside, the glaring sunlight gave me a dazed sense of rebirth. Returning to my courtyard, Madame Zhou embraced me and wept uncontrollably. Once again, we had narrowly escaped death's door. After this incident, though the consort and Jasmine, you loathed me intensely, Prince Victor's decree prevented them from openly targeting me again. My standing in the prince's estate grew increasingly delicate. No one dared provoke me lightly, yet no one wished to draw close either. I was content with this arrangement and withdrew further into seclusion. The day of the selection arrived. Jasmine Yu, her facial rash not fully healed, was unable to participate. In the end, only the 8th lady, Jane Yu, represented the prince's estate in the selection. Jane Yu was betrothed to a nobleman from the imperial clan, which was considered a favorable outcome. Jasmine Yu fell gravely ill from the disappointment, and afterward became even more eccentric. My slight connection with the 5th Lord, Ethan Yu, remained intact. Occasionally, he would send me some less important miscellaneous books he had read, delivered by his trusted manservant. I would reciprocate with well-made pastries. It was a silent alliance. In the summer, war broke out at the border, and Prince Victor was dispatched by imperial decree to lead the campaign. The prince's estate grew much quieter. The princess was occupied with managing the household and had little attention to spare for us, the illegitimate daughters. I enjoyed a rare period of relative tranquility. I spent my days practicing needlework with Madame Zhou, reading, and secretly learning to write. It seemed life would continue peacefully like this, until autumn, when Prince Victor returned triumphant. He brought back a trophy of war, a young woman from a foreign tribe. Rumors said she was a princess from a vanquished clan, breathtakingly beautiful and captivating. Prince Victor doted on her greatly, directly granting her the title of consort. The arrival of this new consort was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, sending ripples across its surface. She had a fiery temperament and paid little heed to formalities, quickly stirring up trouble within the inner household. She vied for favor with the other consorts and concubines, defied the princess, and even dared to act petulantly toward Prince Victor at times. Strangely, Prince Victor seemed to indulge this behavior, showing her considerable leniency. The women of the rear courtyard grumbled in discontent, but dared not voice their anger openly. Madame Zhou and I watched from a distance, hoping the flames of conflict wouldn't spread to us. Yet, the very thing I feared came to pass. One day, this new consort suddenly sent someone to summon me. My heart raced with anxiety, wondering why this favored consort would seek out someone as invisible as me. I cautiously made my way to her lavish, new courtyard. The new princess reclined on the plush sofa, dressed in dazzling ethnic attire. Her gaze lazy yet discerning as she appraised me. "So you are the 9th lady? Lift your head and let me see." I lifted my head as instructed, but quickly lowered it again. "TSK, so thin and small. Nothing worth looking at." She waved her hand as if shooing away a fly. "I heard your needlework is quite good. Embroider a handkerchief for me. Make it distinctive. None of those common flowers and grasses. How vulgar. Do it well, and you'll be rewarded." Distinctive? That word felt too sensitive. I replied cautiously, "You flatter me, consort. My needlework is crude and unworthy of your attention. Just embroider it when told." She interrupted impatiently. "Enough nonsense. Embroider. An eagle from our grasslands. One soaring high, with wings spread. Bring it to me in 3 days. Now leave." Driven out by her, my heart grew heavy. An eagle and one soaring high. The pattern itself carried an ambition and wildness unfit for the inner chambers. Would embroidering it bring trouble? But refusing would immediately offend this favored consort. I returned to discuss with Madame Zhou, who also wore a worried expression. This mistress really knows how to make trouble. Embroider it, Arya. Just follow the most common pattern. Don't make it stand out. Just get it over with. I nodded. As there was nothing else to be done, I found a design, chose the most conservative composition, and simplest stitches, embroidering without any flair, even somewhat rigidly. 3 days later, I brought the finished handkerchief to the new consort. She picked it up, glanced at it once, then tossed it aside disdainfully. "What is this rubbish? Lifeless, completely spiritless. You Central Plains people's crafts are so dull." I lower my head. "Your daughter's hands are clumsy. I beg your highness to forgive my offense." She waved her hand dismissively. Forget it. Get out of my sight. Just looking at you annoys me." I felt a wave of relief and quickly withdrew. However, what I didn't expect was, a few days later, Prince Victor suddenly came to my small courtyard. An unprecedented first. Madame Zhou and I were terrified out of our wits, quickly kneeling to welcome him. Prince Victor's expression revealed neither joy nor anger. He walked straight into the room, his gaze sweeping over the simple furnishings before finally settling on me. "A few days ago, Concert Lawn asked you to embroider an eagle?" My heart sank. "Yes, father. Where is the embroidery?" I quickly retrieved the rejected handkerchief and presented it to him. Prince Victor picked up the handkerchief, examining it carefully for a long time. My heart pounded like a drum. Could this ordinary eagle have violated some taboo of his? Finally, he set down the handkerchief, his gaze returning to me. "Did you design the pattern yourself?" "Father, I copied the pattern from an illustrated book in the study," I replied cautiously. Prince Victor fell silent for a moment. Concert Lawn said this eagle lacks vitality. "What do you think?" My scalp tingled with dread. I am foolish, only capable of these rigid stitches. Please instruct me, father." Prince Victor gazed at me for a long moment before speaking calmly. "Indeed foolish. Henceforth, if Consort Lawn asks anything of you, refuse directly. Say it is my command." "Yes, thank you, father." Though I didn't understand the reason, I quickly agreed. The prince said nothing more and turned to leave. Madame Zhou and I collapsed to the floor, unable to regain our composure for quite some time. Later, we vaguely learned from the fifth lord, Ethan Yu, that Consort Lawn, presuming upon favor, had made improper requests to the prince, even hinting at meddling in court affairs, which displeased him, and my lifeless, spiritless eagle, by sheer coincidence, might have aligned with the prince's desire for her to behave meekly. Once again, I narrowly escaped danger. Consort Lawn seemed to have been warned by the prince afterward and became more restrained. She no longer troubled me. As the years flowed by, I grew up amidst constant anxiety and caution. When I reached the age for the coming of age ceremony, the princess held a small, symbolic ceremony for me. A few distant relatives attended, and the gifts they brought were rather ordinary. I accepted all of this calmly. Madame Zhou secretly saved up a pitiful amount of private savings for me. "Arya, in the future, you must always plan for yourself." Strange people and occurrences still occasionally appeared in the prince's estate, only to vanish quietly. Prince Victor's purges never ceased. Madame Zhou and I understood without speaking, growing even more silent. Ethan Yu began preparing for the imperial examinations. We occasionally exchanged notes through maids, sharing some insights on our studies. He was surprised by some of my perspectives, but never probed deeper. This secret communication became a glimmer of light in my gray life. A year later, Ethan Yu unexpectedly passed the exams and became a provincial graduate with a fairly good ranking. This caused quite a stir within the prince's estate. A son of a concubine, yet he had earned an official title, and the prince's attitude toward him had softened somewhat. Ethan Yu became increasingly busy, and our contact gradually diminished. But I was happy for him. At least he now had a glimmer of hope to escape this prince's estate. 2 more years passed, and it was time for marriageable age. The princess began arranging marriages for several daughters of concubines. My marriage would determine the course of the rest of my life. The candidates the princess selected for me were, without exception, beneficial to the estate, but they were either frivolous playboys, elderly men seeking a second wife, or located far from home. Not a single one was suitable. Madame Zhou was frantic with worry, but she was powerless to change anything. I, too, felt despair. Had I struggled to survive all these years, only to end up a sacrificial pawn for the family? I couldn't just wait for doom. I thought of Ethan Yu. Now that he had an official rank, perhaps he could have some influence. I had my maid secretly deliver a letter to him, with sincere words. I begged him to put in a good word for me before Prince Victor, not seeking to marry into a noble family, but only hoping for a match close to home with a simple household. The letter was sent, and I waited anxiously. A few days later, news arrived. Prince Victor rejected the worst candidates selected by the princess for me. For reasons unknown, the princess seemed somewhat displeased but said nothing. She reviewed the options again and finally settled on a family. It was the second son of a declining scholarly family in the capital. The family was poor, but he was a scholar, said to be honest and from a simple household. This was the best outcome possible. I breathed a sigh of relief. Knowing that Ethan Yu had helped me, I sent a maid with a token of gratitude, an ordinary inkstone. He accepted it without sending a reply. The wedding date was set for half a year later. Madame Zhou began busily preparing my dowry. The dowry provided by the prince's estate was meager and sparse. Madame Zhou used all the savings she had accumulated over the years and secretly sold a few inexpensive pieces of jewelry to barely afford some decent items for me. Arya, this concubine is useless. This is all I can give you. She held me in her arms, tears streaming down her face. Don't say that, concubine. I comforted her. This is already more than enough. I will be fine. Leaving this oppressive prince's estate might bring a new beginning. The night before the wedding, Ethan Yu sent his trusted manservant to deliver a book to me, a rare collection of poems with a banknote tucked inside. The amount was small, but enough for emergencies. Looking at the book and the banknote, my eyes grew slightly warm. In this cold prince's estate, such a modest warmth felt incredibly precious. The next day, I put on my wedding dress and stepped into the bridal sedan. There was no grand ceremony, nor many people to see me off. Madame Zhou wept bitterly, supported by her maid. The princess and the others merely offered a few perfunctory words of ceremony. The wedding sedan chair was lifted and departed from Prince Victor's estate. I quietly lifted a corner of the sedan curtain, looking back at that imposing mansion. It resembled a massive tomb, burying countless lonely souls. Along with my timid youth, I felt no attachment, only relief. My new husband was indeed, as rumored, an honest, somewhat dull scholar. His family was poor, and my mother-in-law was somewhat harsh. But overall, we managed to get along. I shed all the vigilance and cunning I had cultivated in the prince's estate, striving to play the role of a gentle, hardworking, and sensible wife. Life was humble but peaceful, a tranquility I had never experienced before. My husband treated me with respect, and though my mother-in-law was nagging, she was not malicious. Using the bookkeeping and management skills I had secretly learned in the prince's estate, I gradually helped manage the household, even devising small ways to increase income and reduce expenses. The family situation slowly improved, and my mother-in-law's attitude toward me softened considerably. A year later, I gave birth to a son. My husband and mother-in-law were both delighted, and my position in the household became even more secure. Occasionally, I would hear news about Prince Victor's estate. Strange occurrences still happened from time to time. I listened in silence. I maintained secret correspondence with Madame Zhou, knowing that I was doing well put her mind at ease. She remained in that small courtyard, living cautiously. She said the estate was growing emptier and colder. A few years later, my husband passed the provincial examination and became a provincial graduate. Though his ranking wasn't high, he finally qualified for an official post, bringing joy to our entire family. After waiting 2 years, he was assigned a county instructor position in a distant county. Though it was a humble post, he was now an official. Our whole family relocated for his appointment. On the day we left the capital, I visited Madame Zhou one last time. As the wife of an official, I now had a proper status, making my visit to the estate somewhat more justified. Madame Zhou had aged significantly, her hair now streaked with gray, but seeing me and seeing my son, she was overjoyed, smiling through tears. Good, as long as you're living well, concubine can rest easy. I slipped her some silver. Concubine, take good care of yourself. I'll find a way. Perhaps someday I can bring you out of here. Madame Zhou shook her head. Don't trouble yourself, Arya. Concubine's fate is sealed in this life. Just seeing you live well is enough for me. Go now, and be careful on the road. I held her tightly, tears streaming down like rain. I knew this might be our final meeting. I left, taking my husband and son, departing from the capital, the heart of power, and distancing myself from that nightmare place, Prince Victor's estate. The world outside was vast and full of hardships, but I was free. I was no longer Yushia, the world, crosser, living in constant fear of discovery. I was Madame Yu, wife of the county instructor, an ordinary woman who conformed to the rules of this era. Many years later, my husband's political achievements were modest, but he served diligently until his retirement. My son studied diligently, passed the imperial examinations to become a metropolitan graduate, and was appointed as a local official. My life has been uneventful, yet peaceful and smooth. I had long since fully integrated into this era. I forgot about computers and mobile phones, forgot about airplanes and high-speed trains. Occasionally, in dreams, I would return to that icy courtyard in Prince Victor's estate, startling myself awake in terror. My husband would drowsily pat me. A nightmare? Sleep now. It's all right. I would lie back down, gazing at the ancient moonlight outside the window, feeling utterly tranquil. I survived, using all my wisdom and luck, abandoning all improper thoughts. I finally integrated into this ruthless era, becoming a silent part of it. Occasionally, I would hear news about the capital. Prince Victor, though advanced in years, remained as cold-hearted as ever, while his sons fought fiercely over the position of heir. Rumors of demons appearing in the prince's estate still surfaced from time to time, only to quietly vanish again. As for Madame Zhou, in the winter of the 3rd year after I left the capital, she passed away quietly from illness. The news took a long time to reach me. The prince's estate buried her according to custom. I wept facing the direction of the capital. Later, I too grew old. My husband passed away before me, and my son brought me to his post to care for me. Grandchildren gathered around my knees. On an afternoon with splendid sunshine, I lay on a rocking chair, nearly asleep. My little granddaughter leaned on my lap and asked in a tender voice, "Grandmother, grandmother, do people have a next life?" I opened my dim, aged eyes, gazed at the familiar, ancient sky outside the window, and gently patted her head. "Sleep now. Just live this life well." The sunlight was warm. I closed my eyes, as if returning to that fearful beginning. Madame Zhou tightly covered my mouth. In this prince's estate, transmigrated women die wretched deaths. I let out a soft sigh. Yes, a miserable death. That's why I must live well, by this world's rules, until the very end of my life. This is my story, a tale of survival, uneventful, drawn out, devoid of earth-shattering legends, only cautious breaths and silent, protracted struggles. I succeeded, and I failed, but regardless, I lived.